which we are also having. For materialists, it's owner's pride and neighbor's envy. But we want to distribute that, oh, we have got something good, please come, have it yourself, it's nectar, take it. So by doing these 4 things which Prabhuji just mentioned about, what do? Like bees in a community, we play our role. Whatever is expected out of us, a small role, big role, everybody has a different role. Everybody cannot do the same thing. According to our propensity, we engage in a particular service and we get from different places and we accumulate this nectar for the pleasure of the queen bee. For us, queen bee is who? Guru and Krishna. Guru is there, Krishna is there for their pleasure. We are getting this whole thing, and the 3 things which the bees do to build this community, they have a lot of hard work they do. They come out of their comfort zone. They cannot just keep sitting in that place and nectar is not going to just come. They go out and they get. Second thing, they do it very enthusiastically. It's not that, secondly, to do this hard work, they have to do it enthusiastically. It's not going to be easy work that you just sit in one place and people are going to come like Ajagar Vritti. People are not going to come there. You have to you play your part. Second is they do it in harmony. All of these, it's not that, I only want to do this and you don't want to do this. If you read a section anywhere about beehives, it says they work in such good harmony and that's why they are so successful in making such a good beehive which becomes a source of nectar for everybody. So just to cut a long thing short, we people are all here, we all are like the drone bees. There's the queen bee and the worker bee and the drones, right? The male bee and the female bee. So we all are doing all these things. For whom? The big bee. Who's Balram. He's the big bee for whom we are all working over there. And ultimately, by trying to do our part, we are sharing this nectar with everybody. In the process, we also get that nectar. Nectar of what? Satisfaction of Guru and Krishna is our nectar. That's our reward, which we get. What better pleasure we can have than knowing that they are satisfied with whatever endeavor we are able to do. Actually, good communities are that we can work with these simple principles, which are, what is a bee? It's not like a very significant person in the creation. Small little creature, but such an important lesson they teach us of community building. So really grateful for the opportunity to be able to just share some thoughts. And now the real nectar will come. Our Daya Baram will present to us what is happening here and what is the vision for this coming year. Thank you, Daya Prabhu.
We have a question. Can I ask a question? So you mentioned that a community is a group of people around a common goal. And so I'm just curious if you could speak a little bit about how a community like the Bhakti Center can rally around a common goal. Because I think in a place where you have a lot of leaders and natural teachers and community builders, it's very easy for people to get very busy kind of building their own kingdoms in a way, or we're all busy leading projects and etc. and doing so many things. But sometimes the sense of unity that we're all actually working towards the same thing can get lost. So I'm curious if you can speak a little bit how in a place, especially like as big as New York City, where we can find that sense of unity. And also the follow-up question is, how do you inspire devotees to come together? I think we're here, we're a very intimate, small gathering here in person and a few devotees online. But there's so many devotees here. How do we as a leadership team or as devotees inspire each other to come together around a common vision?
Various things could be done. When you have one thing which Brother Gopinath Temple, I must again refer back because that's my part of my experience. Radhanath Maharaj, he was the caretaker, he was the guardian of the program, so his was all very important. However, beyond that, he would keep inviting various senior Vaishnavas, those devotees whom we have read about in the Lilamrit, those were Swamis, Sannyasis, senior people from all over the planet, right? And he said, please come to Gopinath Mandir. And when they would come, like we call in our English language crowd pullers, like that, right? So when we heard that the Amrit Swami is coming, or Niranjan Swami is coming, or Bhakti, and those times Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj would come so many times. So when such people with such effulgent Krishna consciousness come, who can resist not going wherever they are? People who travel from Bombay, and we have a Krishna place called Pune, right? It's about 4 hours from there, right? So people who come from various places wherever they are, Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj is coming. Because everyone wants, everyone hankers, as she said, for nectar. We are all hankering for nectar, right? The heart is deeply hankering for that Krishna conscious deep experience. And people who are empowered to give that experience, when they come in over here, this hall will definitely get flooded. Definitely get flooded. So one way to do is to really invite people who can actually attract lots of people to come. And that will be the one thing I'm thinking. Then something else.
And also by creating service opportunities. The more opportunities are there, if you just ask me to come somewhere, just to attend a program, fine, I like it, I would like to come and hear a class. But when there is, the nature of the soul is to serve. Even a newcomer, we know the example at Matchless Gift, how the hippie brought a toilet paper, just a roll of toilet paper and he gave. So that requires brainstorming that what service opportunities we could create, like your Rath Yatra, whatever festivals are there, by which we could attract people on the pretext of service. Because youngsters, they like to do, nobody likes to just sit and hear something, but active service, and by doing that you are automatically attracting Krishna's mercy. So when you do service, you get prasad. So sometimes service opportunities also becomes like a pull-up to be able to come. Not just like the regular services, but creating just offhand some Thanksgiving festival or just a different flavor to it. So like Utah has the Holy Festival, Festival of Colors, the Utah Temple. So some unique.
Festivals are great thing also. Festivals always bring utsavs are a great way of, because everyone's life is actually quite boring outside, right? People are practically bored to death outside. They don't know what to do with their life, right? So people are looking for a change. People want something variegatedness, right? Even devotees, they are bored of their lives because they have to work in the office 8 hours, 10 hours, crazy. So festivals will also have been, as I said, crowd pullers will be great personalities, celebrities of our temple. But they can also, festivals can be a great, so organizing festivals. Like for example, in our temple, one of the biggest festivals, 2 festivals have attracted a lot of people is the decoration of Sharad Purnima, where you have the entire altar transformed into Vrindavan with various landscaping gardens and fountains and peacocks and things like that. The whole thing is made like into Vrindavan. Sharad Purnima, you have the moon behind, right? To fit the beautiful moon of Sharad Purnima. And other festival has been, for example, Pushpa Abhishek, right? You are here, police from Gopinath Mandir. So it has a flower festival. I don't know, you are in a flower festival?
Yes.
Yeah, you know what it is, right? And how high people go in that festival, right? So people, things like that, which actually are unique.
Actually, out of the box thinking.
Yeah.
Like for example, we had a Sunday school program going on in the small locality which we stay, Meera Road. And we have about 150 children part of it. But due to COVID, the attendance of the children went down because physically coming is one thing and to have children sit on the screen, very difficult, They'll just go off. Anyway, they are restless people. So the numbers started reducing. So just before we came to the US, we just thought that now how to increase the number of children coming. So we organized a food festival, Ananda Mela. And we set up like games, a rainbow festival basically. So where there were game stalls and there were food stalls for the children. And about 500 children came for the program. And they came, they enjoyed, and they all registered for the Sunday school. And now we have to increase the center to get, to cater to all these children. We need more teachers to come and all. So that became like a better problem than not having students, right? But it's just, as they say, Bhakti Vinod Thakur used to do preaching, but a lot of his time he spent in planning. So, if we, just as a group, we come together and we could do something like that, thinking out of the box. Each center has their own unique situation, so we have to think that. Just the second question which Prabhu was asking that, how to do. Usually they say, psychologists say that there are 3 zones in which all of us live. One is a comfort zone, one is a stretch zone, and one is a panic zone. So usually which zone 80% of the people stay in? Comfort zone.
Not New York. New York is more panic zone.
No, what I need to say is
That is
that
the
Panic zone is a comfort zone.
Yeah, yeah.
that's what I wanted to say, that we have become just so comfortable with the type of lifestyle that we all are leading that we don't feel like stretching for something extra. So when you go that extra step, for whom? For our community. Then enthusiasm attracts enthusiasm. If like you are doing something and I say, oh, wow, if he can do, why can't I do? If she can do, why can't I do it? So enthusiasm is also very contagious. So somewhere getting into panic zone makes your life go off balance. But coming out of the comfort zone to the stretch zone, everybody must feel a little bit of stretch in your life. That's the only way to be able to contribute to communities. Otherwise, if everybody is just in their own comfort zone, who's going to do the outreach program? Who's going to get?
Missionary work.
Yeah, the missionary spirit which is required. That is, of course, the example is there, Srila Prabhupada for us. But everybody needs that to come out of their comfort zone, to be able to do something.
Thank you. Does anybody else have a question they'd like to ask?
These two are so great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming. Your enthusiasm is beautiful.
Everybody is waiting for your presentation.
I'm trying to delay my presentation.
Please come.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, so everybody can see the screen. So thank you to Visakha for your day, for being with us, humoring us, enlivening us, nourishing us. So I'm just going to walk us through a slide here, and the first thing I'm going to do is we're just going to share a little bit just what's on the agenda, and I hope that everyone online can also see as well. Just another things that we're going to want to cover while we're here. The first thing is I'm going to just give a few welcome and recognitions, just some things that I think are important to acknowledge that have happened in the last few months that I just want to point out and appreciate and acknowledge. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about what we're referring to as a 2 to 5 year mindset here at the Bhakti Center, sort of our long-term thinking, and how that reflects and informs some of our short-term planning and thinking. And that's going to relate to what we're referring to as our staff and community culture. What we're trying to build here, not just in terms of programs and initiatives and goals, etc., but like the fabric of the culture and how we want to behave and the mood that we want to imbibe as a community. And then always in these concerns, we want to be able to highlight new faces and team members that are here, so everybody knows who's who and who's come into our community and come into our family in the recent months. And at the end and also throughout, I want to be able to open up for Q&A. So this is kind of an open forum, so it doesn't have to be hold your questions to the end. But if at any time anybody has something they want to ask, and in between anything comes up, we'll pause and want to have some questions and discussions. So to kick us off, to start, I want to begin with, these are some things I wanted to read. This is our vision statement of the Bhakti Center and a few of our values. And I'm going to read it out loud for us just because I have the microphone. But we start a lot of our leadership team meetings reading this statement. This is a statement that was crafted based on inspiration of vision given to us by Radhanath Swami and some of our senior gurus, was shared with our board of directors, was sort of kind of ratified, as they say, into the constitution of our organization, and it sort of paints a picture of who we are and what we're trying to do. And so I thought I would read this for us because it's always a beautiful way to start some of these sanghas. It says, our vision at the Bhakti Center, we exist to develop a nourished, inspired, and engaged community of devotees that people love to be around. we strive to create relevant ways as actually our offering to our group from Ra. And from that, so many beautiful things will flow. So that's just our vision statement and our values that we wanted to just share and put at the forefront. And there's just a few appreciations that I just wanted to share, just some acknowledgements of things that have taken place. Before I speak further, I'd like to just take a pause and have an opportunity for us to engage with each other a little bit. And if you're at home or wherever you are, if you're tuning in online, if you're with somebody else, you can turn to your partner, find somebody in the other room, go grab somebody. If you're at work, bring them in, you can do something, or just journal it down with yourself. But I'd like to just turn to a neighbor, just one person, and just share something recently that you've appreciated, whether it be at the Bhakti Center, at a program, or in your spiritual life, or just an appreciation that comes to your mind, something that you want to acknowledge in the recent past. It could be any time this past year, or the recent weeks, or the last few days. But just turn to somebody close to you, next to you, and just share something that you've appreciated, like a person or an event or an act that you saw that if you had the opportunity to share it with somebody, you would. And you have that opportunity right now, so I want to just turn to somebody. If you can just go ahead and do that. I'll give each person just a minute or two.
That's my appreciation. Being a part of the course, oh, in the center itself. I love you. I didn't say for a comment.
After the world starting
We can just spend the whole evening doing this. Yeah, my job is finish up whatever you're sharing. Come back on your space. That little group back there. I'd love to hear one or two things that came up. Somebody just wants to just shout out something. What was something that you were sharing? There was some conversations going on. I'd love to just share with the room. Anybody want to just share one or two things that they said or that they heard? Yeah,
Hare Krishna. So I appreciate, I feel that there's many people here that really want to make an impact on the world, starting with the heart of it, New York City. And just appreciating being a part of that. There's seems to be a lack of complacency. Everybody's trying to figure it out. How can we do that? How can we make some impact? How can we help people's lives? So
beautiful.
my appreciation.
Krishna, your hand was up too.
Yeah, I thought of sharing what Prabhuji shared with me. That was Prabhuji's point. So whatever impact happens in New York, it reverberates across the globe. So Bhakti Center is the place where we get it.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Anybody else? Yeah, Bergerani back there.
So in our group, we had two main ones that I want to share. One is an appreciation for Thursday night kirtan and for whenever the morning program has enough people, right? So when we're coming together, this energy there. And and the other was an appreciation for Arjuna and he's just here. He has been here, and his omnipresence, yes, and may he always be here.
Hari Hari Bol. Beautiful, beautiful. One more thing, I'd love to hear just one more from somebody. Good enough, yeah.
We were just appreciating being able to come together for the first time after a long time and do it here.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. Thank you for coming together. Just a couple of things I want us to just acknowledge, and this is just kind of short, but no names specifically, but we've had a number of festivals over this year already. We had a Gorpani season festival, Nityananda Kapoor's Appearance Day, Ram's Appearance Day, etc. We have a String Day Appearance Day coming up next Sunday, 1 week from tomorrow. And all of those programs take a tremendous amount of energy, volunteers, resources, donations in order to support the programs. And so to all of our volunteers who are here and not here, just always really want to appreciate the volunteers and the people coming together. Krishna Dai Prabhu and his wife have been cooking for a number of our festivals and programs. So a number of beautiful ways in which the community comes together to acknowledge the effort that it takes to kind of put on those programs. Also, it was really beautiful, something I was appreciating last week. Was that our first outdoor Soul Spot
Yes.
event?
Yes.
We kicked off our outdoor Soul Spot event for the season because the weather is now warmed up so we can be outside. So although today is a little gloomy here in New York, last weekend it was really, really warm, bright, and beautiful. It was also the weekend of the wedding of our dear friends Janavi and Kula. And after being outdoors in the kirtan at Soul Spot in Washington Square Park, a lot of devotees came back to the Bhakti Center for kirtan. And it was a really, really beautiful sangam of devotees just chanting kirtan. And there are devotees from all over the world, from London, from all over the United States, from the West Coast, from Florida, some people from Australia. And it was just a beautiful thing to recognize devotees coming together in such a beautiful, beautiful, sweet way. The last thing I just wanted to also kind of recognize as well is that myself, I've been traveling a little bit this year, a little bit more than I would have normally liked to, but just opportunities and things have been coming up, and we've been leading various retreats and trainings in different places around the U.S. or the world. And it's been really wonderful to see people connect with the Bhakti Center in our local New York community, as well as from all over the world. One just story I wanted to share was, there's a young girl, around a little younger than me, we're young people still, I think. She lives in Hawaii, and she somehow came across Johnny V's music somewhere on Spotify. I'm not sure exactly where, but she started listening to Johnny V's music. She used to live in the DC area, Baltimore area, and Boston area, somewhere over there, and she'd be listening to the music on the way to work, and she just fell in love with Johnny V's music, started following her on Spotify and Instagram, and when Johnny V did a retreat earlier this year in Puerto Rico, she signed up, and it was her first sort of like engagement or interaction with devotees. Went to this retreat that she led in Puerto Rico. I was there, Kishore Chandra was there, and she met us and built a relationship. And she just wanted to do more stuff that we're doing. And we led recently, Kishore and I, kirtan training in Mexico in March, first week of April. And she came along, and she was just waiting. She was like, I want to know when's the next thing you're doing. And she lives in Hawaii. She can't come to Thursday night kirtan. So let's come to this kirtan training. She came to kirtan training, was learning how to do kirtan. She wants to do more. She's coming with us to India in the fall. And she also just recently applied to move into our ashram here in New York and wants to come in New York and have an immersive ashram experience. And just seeing the way, I think, that when people build a connection in a meaningful way, that's so much what we're here to be doing. I was having the opportunity to have dinner or lunch with Visakha Priya and Dwarkadish Prabhu before this event that we're having here now, and talking about the way that we as a community, when we come together to connect with just people on an individual basis, programs or classes are happening and programs are happening, etc. But when we connect with people on a one-on-one basis, that's what draws them in. That's what they want to be more a part of. When they come to a kirtan, when they see people at Washington Square Park, when they come to retreat, and they just get to know you, and then there's a personal invitation to whatever's happening next, and you build that relationship. It takes people along in their spiritual life in a really, really profound way. And so each of you play a role in that, the relationships that you're building, the connections that you're making. And so Just wanting to thank everybody for the festivals that we get to have, for the kirtans that we get to have, retreats and trainings that we get to lead, and the connections that make along the way are making a difference, and there's impact taking place. So the next thing I wanted to move into our agenda was this idea. This is where we're getting a little bit into the substance of what we wanted to share, this 2 to 5 year mindset. Our leadership team at the end of last year, at the end of 2021, moving into 2022, we started to set goals for ourselves. We started to set goals for what's our 2022 goals. And as we started to set goals, we started to think, well, we can set goals for the next 6 months or the next 1 year, but where is this really going in the long term? And I think a lot of times at the Bhakti Center, especially for those of us who have been around for a long time, there's been naturally sometimes a short-term way of thinking. There's a crisis that needs to be solved, or there's a construction project that needs to be finished, or there's a mortgage that needs to get paid off, or there's a tension that needs to be smoothed out, or whatever it may be. And we're kind of sitting back, okay, there's no major construction projects going on. There's no major tensions that we necessarily need to resolve. Like, what are we going to do with ourselves? And it was like, actually started to think about what we wanted to do as a center long-term in New York City. And especially having moved through, and still moving through to some degree, the tail end of a pandemic, I kind of got a sense that the world, New York City, kind of split into two crowds of like, I got to get out of New York City, or I belong in New York City. And so there's still some people that are here. And you online, some of you may just be in Brooklyn but didn't want to make the journey out here, which I totally get. But for the sense of what we want to do for the long haul in this city at the Bhakti Center. So we started thinking, what's our 2-year goal? What's our 5-year goal? What's our 10-year goal? Where do we want to be 5-10 years from now? And how are the goals that we're setting today serving in that purpose? And so we started to think about how our immediate goals can serve our long-term goals. And what's beautiful about setting longer-term goals is that they don't shift when a management replaces itself, when a new executive director comes in, or a new program director comes in, or a new program manager or a head pujari has to shift. It's not that all of a sudden the organization has to turn itself upside down because the goals are starting over. There's a plan that we as a leadership team, as a community, as a board of directors have determined this is where we want to go, this is what we want to be. And it's an exciting and also a challenging process in a place like the Bhakti Center because we are so many things. We are so many things. It's sometimes hard to figure out what we're doing. We want, and the things we want to do. We want to school, we want to build outreach programs, we want to do university outreach and programs, we want to do, there's so many things, and it can feel exciting and a little thick. And so for us, I love what Brajarani on our leadership team mentions, we can do all of it. We just can't do all of it right now. But we can do all of it if we plan and prioritize and make set plans to be there. So the idea of some of our goals this year, which I'm going to share with you in a minute, I'm just kind of teeing it up for us to be able to understand the concept, is some of the goals that we want to set in place now, or in order for us to think about where we want to be in the future. And a large inspiration we were taking as Dorothy was mentioning was this idea of the Chowpatty inspiration, specifically in terms of the way that, and they're not the only community in the world, they're just a community that we have a lot of connections to, and Rana Swami, the spiritual visionary of the Bhakti Centers, built a project there, and of course there are other beautiful, amazing Silicon Valley and communities that Juma Swami's building around the world. There's so many beautiful communities. But particularly when I think of the Chowpatty community, and the way, not that this is a beautiful, bright community of devotees, but the way that they've made an impact in the city of Bombay, I think is quite remarkable. When you look at things like the Bhaktivedanta Hospital, when you look at things like the midday meals program, when you look at the way that when a pandemic hits, the city has Gauranga Prabhu's number on speed dial of things that they can do to help the people of the city know that this is a community of people making an impact on a government level, on a social level, and of course, with spiritual nourishment. And so for us to be able to think about how are we maximizing our opportunities in New York City. I think a couple years when the pandemic hit, there was very much this idea of global outreach and virtual programming, etc., which we're still maintaining and we're still doing, and we're finding that there's a lot of that, and it's beautiful. We have, and some of you may know, we actually have a podcast at the Bhakti Center that we started and is still going. I don't know how many podcasts started in the pandemic, and I don't know how many of them survived. But we have one that's still going. We do it every single day. It's Kishore Chandra, myself, along with the Chutagopi every morning. We do it live, 9 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. And then it's recorded. People can tune in. But the reason I bring it up is because we have a live audience, and I don't know, there's maybe a couple people that are here in New York, but there's people tuning in from the Philippines, from Texas, California, from Brazil, from India, from Ohio, Philly, near, far, all the way across the oceans. And we do very much have that global audience feel and connection, which is beautiful. And at the same time, what makes us unique and special? Anybody can, in some ways, start a training program online or do a podcast, etc. But the fact that we're in New York City, that we have a building in New York City and a community that we're building in New York City is something very, very, very special. And as we started thinking about goals moving forward, we didn't want to just build online platforms, which have value and we want to continue, but also why are we here in New York City? Like, why are we actually here in New York, and how are we leveraging the beautiful opportunities that we have to be in a city like this? And so the question that started coming up was, how are we relevant to what's important to people today? There are a lot of issues that are taking place in the world, and not that we necessarily take political stands or social stands on any particular issue, but that there are things that people are going through, and how are we relevant to the issues, the crises, the circumstances, the questions that people have going on in their minds today. And for us being a resource in a place like New York City, where whether it's city officials or other organizations see us as a beacon of light, that they can come to us, that we're doing initiatives, doing projects, we have something going on that is serving the people in New York City in a profound and impactful way. So those are the things that we were kind of thinking of, and when we started to think about our goals for this year, we realized that there's a lot of getting our act together that we needed to kind of start working on in a sense. There was a beautiful, the idea of growing into the size and scope of a community that we want to, and the number of people that we want to reach. The question is, are we really ready for something like that? If an influx of thousands of people wanted to walk through our doors, would we be ready for something like that? Do we have the infrastructure, as Prabhu was so nicely mentioning, whether it be the organization and systematic infrastructure, the community care systems, the ability to care for and cultivate a community of that scope and size. And we realize we're just not there yet. We want to be, we see ourselves being able to be there. So the goals that we set for this year was really about how can we create scalable infrastructure for extraordinary growth. So I'm going to share with you some of the goals that we've set, for this year that we're working on, that we plan to continue working on for the rest of the year, that exist and were set in service to bigger, longer-term visions and plans that we have for the Bhakti Center in the years to come. And before I move on to that, because I don't want to go too long with me just speaking, I'm going to have you turn to the partner again. It could be the same one, or if you're brave enough to get around and move and find somebody else. Nityananda's Chandra partners have left the building, or he's in the back. I'd like you to just turn to somebody and just share what's something that excites you about being in New York City, being in a community like the Bhakti Center in New York City. When you think about, we've had this question at different times before, but I just want to hear from you and give you the opportunity of connecting with somebody next to you, something that you see currently that excites you and you're wanting to see more of, something that you're not seeing that just kind of has always been this thing in your heart that you really feel is really, really exciting. And just get an opportunity to share it with somebody next to you. I'd like for you guys to just kind of connect real briefly, turn to each other, and then we'll move on to sharing the next part of our presentation. Where are you going, buddy?
could be art, which could be
Go ahead and finish up.
My last question is ours.
Okay, whoever's speaking, finish up. Come back into the space, and hopefully for you online, that you're also able to connect with somebody or jot down on a journal or have a conversation or session directly. And as we come back into the space, I think
excitement. People want to talk.
people want to talk. So let us hear. I feel like I can just let you guys talk the whole time. Let us hear some of the things that were just bubbling into the surface of your guys' conversation. I'd love to hear for a couple people. Vasudev's got ready to belt it out.
Yeah, better start with something better.
Got nothing exciting going on in that conversation. They were discussing the soccer matches. Arjun and Prabhu.
We were speaking about the vibrancy of the parks,
Oh my God, yeah.
The vibrancy of the parks.
the park culture, the park energy, and gatherings, books, kirtans, and like that.
Being out in the streets, people.
Rajrani brought up the point of, someone brought it up, book rooms, reading rooms, plugging in with Wi-Fi, snacks, this, that, those kind of rooms with nice attractive storefronts. That's possible in this environment.
Beautiful, beautiful.
There's like this great outdoor thing, but there's also really great indoor things, like arts and readings and all that kinds of indoor things. Both of those, with these 9 million people, both opportunities exist here.
I love that. I'm an indoorsman myself personally. My wife likes to go camping. I prefer to be indoors. Anything else? Anybody else that came up? Yes, Prabhu, please.
Hare Krishna, everyone. I come from the Bronx. I stay over here.
Welcome.
The same way how the energy in the parks and the Harinam is going on, is there any way we can expand it to the other borough? I feel like we're stuck a little bit there, and it would be nice to have it, once in a month or once in some time, so that people can,
Haribo.
know that, this exists also.
Haribo.
I feel like we're deprived from this beautiful knowledge, energy, and what's going on.
It's so beautiful. I was just, as I was speaking with Dorganish Prabhu and Shakapuri Devi, that they started coming to the devotional community in the temple in Bombay in 1982, 85, in the early 80s. and it's grown a lot since then. They've seen a lot of changes, and at a certain point when they started to implement like a counselor or mentor system there, it's such a huge place, a building community, that they had to divide the city up into 5 zones. The city of Bombay is so big in order to just ensure that every area of the city was receiving care, was receiving nourishment, was receiving connection on some level or another. And I was really inspired by that because I think it's easy in a city as big as New York, and not just, you think of New York and the 5 boroughs, but then you've got just surrounding areas. You've got New Rochelle, you've got New Jersey, you've got Long Island, you've got so many places in the surrounding area. And for us to really think about how we're connecting with every nook and cranny of the space around us. And so thank you for representing the Bronx and being here. And I think Rajrani heard you, and she's keeping that one in mind.
Yeah, I've been wanting to, all over the city, I think is important. One of the things that we've also been talking about doing, hopefully it'll start in May, is at least once to Jersey City, which is not the city, and yet they kind of feel it. They kind of think they are.
It's like you're,
You know they say that New York is always depressed? Because Jersey City is the light of the end of the tunnel.
I never heard that one.
I'm gonna use that.
Okay, on that note, we want to hear one more thing. I'd love to hear from one more person, something that was being shared. Anybody wanted to? Yeah, go, Paulina.
We were just sharing just the we didn't use this word, but I was thinking like the latent potency of the Bhakti Center. There's something very potent here. And I think maybe over the last couple of years it's got a bit dormant because of the pandemic, but there's definitely something very special here. People feel it very much so. And that will shine again very brightly again soon. So I think that's what's exciting.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Gopalji. I love that thought of like a latent energy that is ready to glow and shine. And just seeing Gopalji, I was reminded of the work that he's done at the UN, and just thinking of all the things that are right here in New York City. You have the UN, you have Broadway, you have Wall Street, you have so many things that are here in New York City of impact, as Nityananda Chandra was bringing of impact. And so, for us to operate on that level, will require a number of ways for us to elevate the way that we operate. So when we started thinking of our 2022 goals for this year, things that we've been working on, I'm going to run through them a little bit one at a time. Just a couple of them. The first thing that we wanted to do was to re-envision our program strategy or our journey. Make it really clear what's the journey someone's taking when they come through our programming. Of course, we've got a lot of different things going on, a lot of programs, a lot of workshops, a lot of trainings, a lot of retreats, etc. But something that's really essential is that it's easy for people to navigate, and really what are sometimes somebody might run through the gamut of our programming, and did they really learn everything we wanted them to learn? Did they really grow in the way that we wanted them to grow? Did they really get the full offering of what we have to give? Or did they just sort of make their way through a bunch of programs, and through osmosis they kind of are feeling inspired to come around more often? And so for us to really create a very clear, communicable, what's the word? Communicatable, macchiato, a communicable, something that you can share with other people. A shareable, clear way. Clear, that's not my job. It's somebody else's job. That people understand what the first step is and what the next steps are, and to really, we've had Vasudeva Prabhu as our senior educator here, and doing a lot of great work with Kishore Chandra about building curriculums and really wanting wisdom, really wanting our core bhakti philosophy to be at the heart of what we do, and be a through line through all of our programmings, but realizing that somebody may or may not take a yoga teacher training, somebody may or may not take even a kirtan training, somebody may or may not take an Ayurveda course, and that's okay, but we really want to make sure that people are getting the core offerings of our bhakti philosophy and our bhakti lifestyle, and making sure that becomes almost like the centerpiece of who we are and what we do. You see a lot of organizations have a flagship offering of sorts, whether it's anything from the School of Practical Philosophy to Sadhguru in Engineering or whatever it may be, and we want to have a flagship offering that we can direct people to, that's easy, that's accessible, that's robust and complete, and that has a journey through. So we're spending a lot of time really, when people come to the Bhakti Center, it's very clear where we want them to go and where to go from there and what our journey is. So we've been putting a lot of work into that. And then our second goal is really establishing, and this word system is really important, establishing a system of community care. And so I got the opportunity, as I mentioned, to have a conversation with Dwarkadish Prabhu and Visakha Devi. There's some other devotees from Chowpatty and other senior community builders from around the world of what it looks like to really not just have community events and gatherings, but build a robust system of community care so that when people come in contact with our community, that they're taken care of in a very deep and inspiring way. Our leadership team had the opportunity to meet with Radhanath Swami a few months ago, virtually, and we asked him, what does he want to see in New York City? Like, we understand New York City is an important place and sharing Krishna consciousness, etc., but what do you actually want to see in New York? And he said a few things, but the first thing that he said with strong conviction, and what he spent more time speaking about than anything else, is I want to see a very strong, vibrant, connected community of devotees in New York. That's what I want to see. I want to see a place where there's a group of people centered around a common goal, that are there for each other, that care for each other, that know that they have a home, that know that they're taken care of. And as Prabhu Dwarkadish Prabhu was mentioning, that requires systems, that requires a little bit of structure, that requires an organization, so that we actually are able to make sure that people have the care needs. So we're expanding our database, we're expanding our mentorship team, we're bringing in senior devotees to help give some vision about what that could look like in a place like New York City, that I do not believe, and Radhanath Swami does not believe, is destined to be a revolving door community of people coming and going. Jai Jagannath, did you miss your flight?
I did.
We love you, Jai Jagannath. Jai Jagannath walked out of here 6-7 hours ago saying he might miss his flight. We're glad you're here, Jai Jagannath. You're going to lead Kirtan at the end of this. So establishing a system of community care, and we'll share a little bit at the end of the slide when we get to some new team members. We have our dear beloved Champakalata Devi, who has been a long-time part of our community, but had relocated during the pandemic, and will be coming back to New York next week. Actually, will be taking the role of our community care coordinator, and will be leading a lot of the efforts to spearhead community initiatives and efforts. So that's a big goal that we're working on, re-envisioning and re-establishing and re-communicating our program strategy and journey, establishing system of community care. The next two really get into the nitty-gritty of wanting us to be able to set ourselves up for scalable growth, and that's create organizational infrastructure. This goal may not seem as sizzly and exciting as it may as the other ones, but I think it's really important for us to be able to have our hiring process, our professionalism, our HR, the systems that we have of how we produce programs, how we, the building is maintained, how our reception functions, how the organization in the building just operates on a day-to-day, creating staff manuals, etc., so that we become a really well-oiled and functioning, I want to say the word machine, that's what I want to say the word machine, but he stresses I can use the word machine. We become a well-functioning machine in a sense that we actually are able to set ourselves up for large-scale, scalable growth. So create organizational structure, and this last one is to explore and expand revenue streams. We were thinking about this at the end of last year, and a thought just came to my mind. It was just like, we just need to be making a lot more money. And it wasn't like I need to be making more money or that our team needs making more money. Like on an individual level, like we're a nonprofit organization. Like the organization, I have a vision. I want the organization to become extraordinarily financially stable. And when we think of an idea that we want to do, we don't compromise because there's a lack of funds. Or we don't have to build programming in such a way that finances are making decisions on the programs that we have to do. We have to focus on programs because they're the money generators, and that actually takes us away from what our actual general mission is. That we don't have to be thinking about when community comes, we don't have to think of our community necessarily even as a source of funds, because we found ways to support our initiatives and fund Radha Muralidhar's worship and fund our community outreach and development that sets us up for being able to pursue things without having to think small. And so we really want to put ourselves in a growth mindset that is financially stable and allows us to make decisions that aren't driven by how are we going to make money. And there's some exciting things that we've thought of and that we're working on. One of them specifically stemmed from Kishore Chandra and I led an online yoga teacher training recently. It started last September or October. It was an 8-weekend training, and it ended just at the end of the winter in March or April or something. And we got invited the students to come together for an in-person dinner at Divya's. And it happened to be on a Thursday. That was Gaur Purnima. Gaur Purnima landed on a Thursday this year. We combined the festival with the Thursday night kirtan. They came for dinner at Divya's, and we were meeting everybody there for the first time. It was strange because we'd known them for 8 months or 6 months or whatever, and meeting them for the first time. I said, "You're a lot taller than I thought you were," and so it was one of those surreal experiences of meeting somebody for the first time. And we were having dinner, and we started talking with one of the students or one of the graduates there. We're getting to know them, and she was saying how she recently was finished writing a book or was writing a book, and I was like, "Oh, do you write?" She's like, "Yeah, I do writing for a living." I was like, "What do you do?" She's like, "I do grant writing. I'm a professional grant writer." And I said, "Really?" And she said, "Yeah, do you get any funding from the city?" And I was like, "No." She's like, "You don't apply to the Department of Cultural Affairs?" I was like, "No." And she's like, "You should do that." And she came up it was beautiful. She came up for the Gaur Purnima Festival, which was such a beautiful time. There was kirtan, did we have a dance or drama that day? There was kirtan.
There's kirtan
Prasad, there was decorations, there was arti, there was puja, there was so many beautiful things coming, there was an abhishek, there were so many beautiful things coming together. And she was just saying, like, the city will fund stuff like this, don't you? And I was like, I didn't know that. And so we've actually taken the opportunity to hire her on a contractual basis. Initially, she was just as a volunteer. I don't think she was trying to give herself a job. She was just coming as to volunteer, and she was consulting us for free. And at a certain point, she started sharing with us ways that you can get funding from the city of New York, specifically the Department of Cultural Affairs, and she created a document with a dozen other places where it's city funding, government funding, etc. So we're actually in the process with her, and Kishore Chandra and Karuna Nimai are leading that charge, and we're putting an application together. Interestingly, this year, the Department of Cultural Affairs deadline for submitting application had been extended. Under normal circumstances, we would have missed it. It was extended this year for some reason. So we're applying this year. That due date for the application is May 16th, which is a week from Monday. And so we're going to submit it on May 15th, which is Sringadeva's appearance day. It's sort of like the start of a new era of how we think about ways in which that we support our organization and also ways that we connect with New York City. I was at another event. I was at our dear friend and yoga teacher and community member Susan. It was her birthday earlier this year, and I went to her place. She had some people over, and I went there. And it was one of the things I walked in, and I thought it's one of those things where you realize how much the social landscape has changed in New York City throughout COVID, where you walk in expecting to see like the usual suspects of people, and you walk in, you realize you don't know anybody that's there, and it's a yoga teacher's birthday, and I'm a guy, and you walk in, it's like all women and a yoga thing, and I'm like, do I belong here? And I sat there and I was like, okay, maybe it'll be 3 minutes. But I actually connected with really beautiful people. And we had kirtan, it was really sweet. And one of the people that I connected with, I asked her what she does. She said, I run a nonprofit. I said, what nonprofit do you run? And she said, we lobby for legislation to support animal rights in New York City. So she works with, there's horse tracks and horse racing that, mistreats animals in a horrendous way, that she lobbies for legislation to help create laws that protect animals. And she was talking about how the mayor of New York City now, Eric Adams, is a vegan, and they've started, many of you that know this, they have vegan Fridays now in public schools. Fridays are plant-based meals in the schools. And they're looking for people to support, because schools, they don't know how to make plant-based meals. It's not even like they don't know, it's like, they're like, what? Like, where's the, they're just used to just putting mac and cheese sauce in the thing and putting it in the oven and sure enough. They don't know what to do, so there's education involved in plant-based eating. And so she connected us with two people, one from, I think, Chili's on Wheels, which is a plant-based food distribution. They serve thousands of meals every year in New York City. And another one was the Coalition for Plant-Based Meal, Healthy Schools. And so Kearney and I had lunch with them here one day and showed them the building. And we're partnering to try to bring prasadam and to bring plant-based meals into schools and education and work with schools and to show that we're interacting in a public service type of way. And so those are some of the things that we're thinking of in order to share and push the envelope of our mission and how we're connecting in New York City and how we are, how we fund ourselves and how we move ourselves in a direction of being in a position to do big things. So those are the goals that we have for this year. And then to do this, we need, and this is going to segue into the next slides that we have, staff and community culture. So there are a few things that we are trying to build into our culture, sort of cultural pillars that we have sort of developed as a leadership team. And we wanted to just share 2 of them. And I'm happy to keep going, but I didn't get a chance to ask her this ahead of time. I was going to ask Brajarani if she wanted to share a couple of these things with us. She's looking at her watch. She was hoping to make an exit.
I can talk.
She could talk. Let's welcome Brajarani up here, and I'm going to get her these 2 things. And I'll sit right here. Now, do you want me to just direct? It's really just the slide. And
Yeah, no.
do you want me to sit here and push the buttons?
I think I can push buttons.
Okay, great.
But I might.
It's just 2 buttons.
Yeah. Okay. So, is this, you can hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
So, there are, I think, 5 pillars, or 4 pillars. We're gonna talk about 2 today, and then the next time that we have the Sangha, we'll talk about the others. So, the first one is about spiritual vibrancy. I think it's very much connected to the sense of community. It's about how we feel as a community, how this building feels, about the programs that we have. We'll talk a little bit about, so we talked about, here's the pillar, but what do the behaviors look like? So we'll talk about a few of the behaviors. Do we have the behaviors on here?
It's just the 2. You said less words is better on the slides.
It's definitely. So there's a couple of things that we're trying to do within this category. One is, because for each one of these, there are very specific things. Like we can talk about that. What does that mean? What does that really look like? So the first pillar of spiritual vibrancy is about our individual sadhana, and that we are encouraging people to have a vibrant individual sadhana with hearing, chanting, whatever morning rituals, etc. That we each reading. So there's the individual sadhana, and then there's what we do as a community. One of the things that I think we're really quite excited about is a community Tuesday mornings. The leadership team will be here for at least Bhagavatam class and Guru Puja. Some of us might be here a little bit earlier for japa. And that this is, we're thinking about as a community morning, right? So if you want to come into the Bhakti Center for one day a week, you want to come in early for a Bhagavatam class, you'll know that Tuesdays is the day that we have our community, we're not calling it morning program because it's
a morning program.
It's a morning program minus some of the morning, minus the early. So that's one piece. We also want to have more opportunities for hearing and chanting, and there's all kinds of things that are coming up around this, whether it is, I think one person wants to do sort of monthly kirtans, so we're looking for how do we continue this year having more and more ways in which we're coming together. We used to have a Kadasi where we did 64 rounds and people would come in for that. Like, what are the ways in which we are coming together more and more for hearing and chanting as a community, staff, and staff being everyone who volunteers, everyone who's paid, everyone who's a resident, so staff in its most broad sense, the entire community coming together.
Does that include like the picnic stuff they used to do also?
I think it needs to include picnics. Yeah, because we haven't had a picnic. Right?
I just
have monthly
remember,
picnics.
I mean, it was a very novel thing for me coming to New York City to see. But I always found it interesting how so many, like, people were joining community groups from the picnics. Sometimes they were meeting devotees on the picnics. you know, somehow coming to a kirtan after that, and then joining a community group after that, and so on. So I was just curious if that was, and it seemed like there'd be something that the community would like to do. It was like, there were shenanigans, obviously, a good portion was like shenanigans, but there was like a kirtan portion to it, and then.
So for those of you who might not have heard this online, Jai Jagat was talking about our community picnics. He said that we had some shenanigans. I think that was things like
Frisbee.
Just
to clarify.
Shenanigans.
Not scandals.
But we had prasadam, we had conversation, we had kirtan,
Frisbee.
and we were doing it at least I think June, July, August.
Yeah.
And it was public facing. It was on the website, and so he was saying that was the way in which we never know how people are drawn to us. It was one of the ways that people. It's actually one of the first things I did. One of the first ways I connected to devotees was actually through this. So more and more, we're going to focus on this year. What are those opportunities for that will increase our vibrancy? And the other piece of that is we had a conversation with the leadership team and the ashram leaders as we tried to build an ashram where people are coming in and learning, going through a program of learning about study, coming to the programs, learning the songs and the whatever, service, etc. So, and that has been, I think, a real part of the whatever vibrancy exists in the building right now. I think a lot of it has come from sort of the re-energizing of the ashram. And the other one is about continuous learning, so our culture of continuous learning, both for staff as well as for the community. For the community, this looks like how do we continue to have some of these programs that we've been having, such as Swami's done some programs, like how do we continue to have programs where people are learning, so we always have things for people who are coming along, but how are we continuing to learn if we think about this sort of this core community? What are the opportunities that we're giving and developing for people? And how are we making sure that we're getting feedback? So we're putting these programs out there. What more do people want to see? And then how do we, as we put something out there, allow people the opportunity to say, this worked, this didn't work, so that we can continue to take what we have, what we're hearing to improve the next time, the next program, etc. So we need this feedback. We've talked about it, and a lot of this fits in our DME Chandra's sort of world, is making sure that we're getting feedback from all the programs that we're providing, and using that to improve them, to continually improve them. We have, for people who are on staff, we have goals. We haven't had that not so much in the past. We have goals. We have weekly touch bases. We have quarterly conversations. We have annual reviews. We have all of that kind of stuff. And ongoing discussions about what's working, what's not working, how do things continue to improve, and those kinds of things, and giving people feedback. So how do if we don't hear feedback, we don't learn to give feedback, and we don't hear feedback, and we can't continue to improve. So those are so this continuous learning and spiritual vibrancy are two of the particular pillars that we think are really essential for this foundational work that we're doing this year to prepare us for growth.
Do you want to take any questions or comments that anybody has?
Questions or comments?
Yes. The continuous learning, the ideal is like, because you reference Sachinanda Maharaj programs, those are great. Is there anything else, like almost like a grown-up community group? I don't know.
Well, so the conversation, the question was.
That's not the right word.
Yeah, but I think like Deepening Bhakti, what is the grown-up community? The more, is that what you're talking about? When you say community group?
Yeah, or something similar.
Well, we did, that was one of our goals this year, was to have more community groups for people who have more years of bhakti. And so we put out a couple of deepening bhakti community groups for this past season. And I don't think we had a lot of sign up for them. And so, which means that it wasn't meeting the needs. We could figure out what that need is, and figure out how we create something that really meets what people need in terms of that. So what has existed is deepening bhakti. We heard that, we put more groups out there, but we didn't sign up for it.
One thing that was there in the past, for a time, was like community lunches also, and that might be something.
And when you say community lunches,
They had it was like a Wednesday, I think. It happened once a week. It was a lunchtime, and it was just open for anyone, everyone to come, and it was kind of promoted. It was promoted as a way for especially the in-house devotees who were serving Radha together to really congregate. Otherwise, New York is such a place where you can literally live in the same area and never see. So it was kind of intended for that, but it was open also to anyone in the community. It may have been advertised also at one point. And at one point, that was like a way in which a lot of people were finding vibrancy, you know, because you would come and have prasad together.
So for those, hopefully you heard, I'll repeat it.
Loving exchanges.
One of the things that Jai Jagman was talking, so we talked about this community morning program, but he's talking about, we used to have a community lunch that was open to anyone from the community to come into, and is there an opportunity for that? So I don't know who's taking notes on this. I'm clearly not, because I'm not here.
We just collect feedback. We don't do anything with it. Just collect it.
Someone take notes. We have a couple of ideas here. Picnics, community lunches.
And the other is from Janavi's wedding.
Yes.
It was kind of like a miracle. She got like literally all the kirtan devatas from all over the planet to come in one space for a weekend. Her wedding was extremely magical, of course, but then the day after at the park, so I was wondering, like, because we do the soul spot every Sunday also from 2 to 5, but we don't usually get that level of turnout. And I was wondering why. And obviously that level of turnout was, you know, magical for the obvious reasons. But I was wondering if, like, is it because we don't invite people to come? Like, I know there's a WhatsApp group, but is there a way to, like, I don't know. I'm thinking about the spiritual vibrancy part. Is the way to, because it's a lot less intimidating when it's like a beautiful kirtan with like 50 devotees. It's like super impactful. Versus when it's like 7 and it's like kind of a straggling team. You know, we're looking a little, you know, like.
Yeah. So I'll speak on that. So the question was, for those who might not have heard it online, is that. Was it last weekend? It was last weekend, yes.
Yeah.
Right? So with so many kirtaneers came in, and so a lot of them were people who came into town. Right. So a lot of that was people who were here for a moment in time. And they all came to Soul Spot in Washington Square Park, and it was really wonderful and really beautiful. And this is one of those things, as someone who has been one of the storytellers of Soul Spot, at times it is, you've been there when there's been lots of people and they come, and the question is, every week feels like, last summer it felt like it was much fewer than it had been sort of the summer before when we had just started doing it, or when we were doing it monthly as opposed to weekly. So trying to figure out, we tried to create a musicians, whatever. And that's it. So we just have to figure this out, and I would love to have musicians figuring it out, and saying this is what we think we need for it to be that vibrant in that kind of way for kirtaneers. So it's that I'm all kinds of whatever kinds of suggestions about how to make that happen. I think we're certainly open to. Other questions or suggestions? Thank you for the suggestions. I have to go upstate.
Right.
I have to go catch a train.
We're just finishing up here, I promise. The last thing that I wanted to just share was just, I think it's always sweet to know who's coming, who's going, and new faces that people see around. I know it's small text because it was a big list. I'm just going to read through them. These are just new team members that we welcomed in 2022, particularly in staff. and so in various positions. We have Nityananda Chandra, who's over here.
Haribo!
Who's here from Texas with his beautiful family. He's our program manager, so he's working closely with Kishore Chandra just to ensure the smooth functioning of all of our programs. So whether it's a physical program, the setup, the management, follow through, etc., the registrations, our calendar, our space management, etc. So he's here bringing a lot of much needed stability to our programming effort. We have Julie Blondina, who's not here at the moment, she's out of town, but she is our new reception manager. And when I say new, I mean at some point in 2022 she started. She's been here for a little while, doing a wonderful, beautiful job managing our reception and making sure that our programs are, someone's there to greet you, etc. We have Rakshan Krishna Prabhu, who is the beautiful brahmachari in white cloth that has been coming up and down doing the artis. He just moved here recently from Chowpatty, from our Gopinath Mandir. He has family here in New York City that he needed to be close to and assist for a particular reason. And so he's actually staying in the building now and is a pujari here and is doing sevan, so we're really, really glad that he's here with us. Susanna is one of our ashram ladies, ashram, that she's taken on officially a role of production manager, so she's also serving on our production team. She's been living in our ashram and doing a lot of wonderful service, and we've crafted an actual role for her in that area. Gaur Sharan, our beloved, my tagline was everyone's favorite Saudi. I didn't want to put him on the shop, but I put Pujari community leader. He's a very, very beloved friend of ours, community leader, mentor, big brother for many, and he's been gone for over a year. He went to India to be with his family and got stuck. Couldn't get back. At least it's what he told us. He might have had the visa in his closet the entire time. But what he told us is that he got stuck and couldn't come back. And the visa finally went through, and he just arrived just earlier this week. And so we're really, 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 really glad to have you. His visa is only for 2 months. We're trying to get that extended. So put a word up there. Champa Kalata, many of you know, I've been a long-time community here, lived in our ashram at the Bhakti Center, relocated just before and during the pandemic, and is moving back to New York City this upcoming week as our community care coordinator. She'll be staying in the building at the Bhakti Center. One of the things that she'll be overseeing and working with is our ashram leaders and our ashram. Will be helping, she'll be a person that will be leading the charge with some of the things that were said, or community picnics, so those types of community groups and sanghas, etc. And so there is a gap right now that we're hoping that she'll come in and fill and help lead those charges. She'll be that particular role as a member of our leadership team, and so she'll join our leadership team in helping to move our goals forward. We have Bhakti Lee Prabhu, is he here? There he is. Very cool. And he's embroidering the building agenda to help us keep our place spick and span and nice looking. He's in our operations team, so he's part of our Bhakti Center team. Karuna Nimai, he's been here for a while, and you may have seen him on our leadership team, but we formally and officially hired him just in April. He's been in a trial role, a new role as a director of operations and business strategy, so he's really helping making sure that our operations are running smoothly and strong. And the last two is Donna Kriya and Emily. They're our men's and women's ashram leaders, and so they are also out of town right now. And so they are not here right now, but they are living in the building and are helping to oversee and run our men's and women's ashram. And so they're our favorite team also. So we got a lot of beautiful faces coming into our community here. This is Rakshan Krishna. And that's it. That's all I gotta say. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. We're gonna end our evening with kirtan. Originally we had this planned at 6 o'clock for Prasad, but due to the devotees' offering schedule and etc. done. Are there any closing questions, comments, statements anyone would like to make or share before we shift to kirtan?
Thanks for all the work you put into developing the plans and sharing the plans. Communication is sometimes difficult or ignored, so appreciate you making that effort.
Thank you very much for all of your continued support and laying the foundation of the community for so many years. Thank you.
I want to appreciate the, I've said this to Kishore and also to Vibrancy's application, but I personally feel that this particular leadership team is doing a really good job at making things kind of like more Bhakti-centric. And not that the Bhakti Center is it's never been Bhakti centric, but just the programming, it just feels like more acutely. I don't know if acutely is probably not the right word. Acute is usually
No, not sharper focus.
yeah, like a zooming in on Bhakti more than I've seen it since I've been here. And that isn't to say previously it wasn't like Bhakti, but it didn't have this sense of zooming in. I think like sharper, like a sharper. And I feel like this team is doing a really good job in just zooming in. Like
It's a good idea to change the name from the Bhakti Periphery to Bhakti Center.
I'm trying to be like classy about it. And I don't mean this as a judgment. I'm just this has been my personal appreciation with this particular team. I think they've done a really good job of like giving that sense. And I feel like I'm seeing results from that also in terms of people coming like from the kirtan training or different things where they're interested in like kind of asking questions about the Bhakti stuff, and I really appreciate that.
Thank you. Ishwar Chandra Blush over there. Yeah, go Holy.
Yeah, thank you, Dale. This is really great. Just to echo what's been said, just to do regular, clear communication is really helpful for us. I would say for me, I think for a lot of people, like the last couple of years have been a real rupture in our lives in various ways. And I'll be honest, when we keep saying community, I feel like a little bit left out because I don't know who the community is anymore.
Yeah.
Like I don't know who's here, I don't know who's gone. And I'm just wondering if we could facilitate some programming where it's just like we just introduce ourselves to each other again. Because I think if we do that, because community is friendship, and I know a lot of my friends have left New York, or whatever. So I'm just wondering if there's a way that we could come together just to know who's in the community, because I really don't know who's around anymore. I really don't.
Yeah, no, I 100% second that. I'm glad you're bringing it up. And I think it's good timing now also, as spring is coming. It's generally a time where people come out and can do stuff and come together. And we're also reaching a place where hopefully coming out of the pandemic where people feel a little more comfortable coming together in a while where they hadn't in a long time. And so I do really believe that coming together just for some dozen events will be a really, really big powerful. One of the things that I really appreciated so much about, there was a kirtan here, we had Washington Square Park on last Sunday, and then there was a kirtan at Bhakti Center. And it was so many beautiful connections and inspirations were coming from just devotees being together. Devotees get inspired, there's a little idea in the back of your head that kind of comes out, or maybe we should do that, or maybe you see somebody and you want to share something and inspiration comes out, and so much comes from devotees just coming together. And and I think that if we feel disconnected or a little left out, or where's my place, then naturally there kind of creates almost like a heavy energy of like, okay, what are we doing, why am I here, etc. We don't know what's going on, and we just feel a part of something and we know what's going on, feel included. So much inspiration comes, and Morkadish Prabhu was mentioning earlier that a long time ago was having a conversation with Radha Swami, and he said, who is the best, and use this word I don't use often, but who's the best preacher of Krishna consciousness? And you're thinking people do this and know this or whatever, thought minds, and they were giving all this answer. He said, no, the best preacher is a happy devotee. And so I'm more happy when we feel connected and included in the struggle of other devotees. So I really, really appreciate you saying that, and I think that that was also some of what Judge Ekman was saying, and I think needs to become more of a focus for us to really have that.
Well, how would we do that like practically? Like we have like a reintroduction invitation. We need you to show up for this, like by name. Like each individual, like we need you to show up for this particular thing. We're going to reintroduce ourselves.
I think there are two ways of doing it. I mean, I'm sure there are many ways, but thoughts that come to my mind is one is that you can just have events for devotees to come and be at. Just have events for devotees to come and be at casually, and I think that a lot of that naturally takes place, even on a casual, organic level, is one. And two is that I think you can actually have events that are structured for devotees to meet people, and it would just need to be done in a very dynamic way. Like, you weren't here at the beginning of Shaka Priya and Dorji's group who gave a talk, and they were talking about making events that have exciting factors that people want to come to, whether it's a really dynamic speaker, maybe there's a certain element that's there, like a fun, exciting event that people want to come to that draws people in, and then you build into that maybe some sense of connecting people or meeting or sharing. I think it has to be intentional in some sort of structured way, as you're mentioning. I don't have the answer right now, but I'm sure that we would think about it if there's a need.
And even directed outreach, because I think sometimes the blanket emails go out and people are like,
Right.
so it's just like,
That's what I was saying.
yeah. You know who's still around, you know who's still around.
Personal invites.
Yeah,
right.
And,
Yeah.
It could be
Need you to come.
It could be a dinner or something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
We need you to show up for this. If you don't show up for anything, we need you for that.
That's beautiful.
I'll do it for the people I know, for sure.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that idea, and please know that it's well taken. Okay, so I think at this moment we will shift into kirtan. And since Jajang has missed his flight, I would say that this Krishna Muralidar's arrangement for him to come and lead kirtan for them. We'd love to have you lead kirtan until 6:30, at which time we'll close the doors and we'll serve prasadam out in the back. So please, let's chant together and take prasadam together. Thank you all so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Krishna. Radha Mulita